my motto in life is it's 10% physical and 90% mental. If you want to do it, you're going to do it.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome Kelly Gray Parker onto the podcast. I met Kelly at an amputee networking event, which we will talk about a little later. And when I was able to speak, what I said was I went through limb loss at a very young age. I was born like this. And Kelly said, hey, me too. And that kind of struck up a friendship between the two of us. And I asked her to be on the podcast. And Kelly, I just want to say thank you for your time to be on the We're Not Stumped podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I
And
really appreciate it.
We're going to have fun. We always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words. So I'd love the audience to learn more about you.
So I have been a quadrilateral amputee since I was a year old. I got bacterial meningitis at actually 5 days before my first birthday. And I got very, very sick, went septic, and they didn't give me much of a chance to live. They said if I lived, I may be a vegetable, maybe have brain damage, heart problems. And I'm very, very thankful, and I made it my goal to prove everyone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the doctors when I was young, I'm very, very thankful that I have my capacities, if you will. Very, very grateful and thankful for a fantastic support system growing up. I feel like that has helped me just on my own personal journey be able to withstand a lot more and to know that people have my back. And that really made, not that it was at all easy being an amputee at such a young age, but it it made it a lot easier, if you will. I know, things could always be worse from that perspective. Um, they never taught me any different, that I had to do anything different. We never, it was just really amazing, especially, in this day and age where we have Google and we can look up answers at a drop of a hat and connect with people, worldwide, just by a click of a button. So it was a lot harder growing up, and I know we'll probably get more into that in a few minutes, but um, just the journeys I have been on, I've always tried to normalize myself through my whole life, um, and just a lot of learning from even doing that and learning to embrace myself. And I found that there's always these new kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Journeys, if you will, that you kind of just get these new life lessons. And I know it's across the board, but you just have a different perspective as an amputee. It definitely changes a lot of things. Um, One of the things just I have always tried to stay positive. That has helped me a whole lot, just having a very positive attitude. I remember people, they would say, "Why do you smile? Why are you always smiling? Why are you so happy?" And I guess they were implying, I didn't realize it at the time, of being an amputee and how are you so happy? And it's kind of like that comic I've seen, or not comic, meme, if you will. The guy that is missing a limb, and everybody's like, "How are you so positive with missing a limb?" And he said, "How are you so negative with yours, having
Oh,
your
I haven't
limbs?"
seen that. Wow.
That
Wow.
is very powerful.
Yeah.
Um, there's been a few things that have been pivotal for me that had kind of changed who I was, and really, really put things in perspective. One of those was when I was a kid, and I was in cheerleading. I was in everything. I did cheerleading, ballet, tap dancing, skiing. I mean, I just did it, my own way. May not have looked perfect, but it was me. Um, and I used to have some kids in middle school and that tease me and make fun of me. And there was a guy that was in my same grade. He was this big burly basketball guy, and he come up and he said, "If anybody ever messes with you, they're gonna have to go through me." And
Wow.
that was the first time outside of my family that I really had somebody stand up for me like that, that was so powerful. And, if I could even talk to him today, I don't even, I've tried to find him through the years, but, if I could go back and say thank you, what an impact it made, I would definitely let him know. Um, and then one other one I'm going to share is I was in my teens. I was on a retreat with my church, I believe, at the time. And I was telling a gentleman my story. We were walking. I was slow across the Purdue campus when we went, and we were walking and talking. And he said, I was telling him about my journey. And he said, some people wear their scars on the outside, and some people wear theirs on the inside. And that was a really profound moment for me that really kind of kicked me in the butt and said, you know what, knock it off.
Really?
When you get through them hard points in life, and just really struck a chord with me.
Oh, that's fantastic. When you talk about the support you got early, I'm assuming you're talking about your mom and dad possibly, or your family in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even I have one brother, my parents, my aunts and my uncles, even my little cousins, I was one of the oldest ones growing up. My brother and I were, as far as the cousins were concerned, and they just knew me all my life and knew that I was different, but they just loved me without seeing that. And it feels so good. I've got a story from one of my best friends that used to live across the street from me. We had been friends for probably close to, I don't know, almost 10 years or so. And yeah, I'd say at least something like that. Anyhow, she she was getting ready for a dance and she was all dolled up. She had got these new high heel shoes and she was like, "You've got to try these on. They're so beautiful and they're so great." And I was like, I was so confused for a minute and I was like, Lens, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot." I was like, "No, really." That's kind of a compliment, to have somebody literally forget that you're an amputee. That um is just really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that they know you and accept you just as you are. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with anything else but you. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
way I'm sure that's the way you want to be looked at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, even my kids, even my kids from time to time will say a certain thing. They're like, "Oh, my bad, mom." I'm like,
What
"No,
is it
you're
like?
good."
So now that you have your own kids, what was that like raising? And how old are they, by the way?
I have a 14 and a 16-year-old. Say a couple prayers for me, please.
Yeah, I had those at one
Um,
time too.
yeah, I mean, it really, again, it's like my younger cousins. And it's something that I think sometimes I forget myself.
Sure.
I remember when you were in the meeting with us maybe a month or so ago, and we were like talking about acknowledging and seeing yourself outside of just your
Yeah.
everyday self. You look in the
Yeah.
mirror or you see your reflection somewhere and you're like, oh yeah, that is me. Or a picture even, um but raising them, there have been times where um it's not so much that I do things different, but like I look different than other moms, so my son has even said a couple times, "What would you do if you had feet or fingers?" I'm like, "I think fingers are overrated. Don't need them. They just get in the way." Um, because like I can type just as fast as anybody with full fingers. I mean, it's crazy even to myself to think that, but just, working on it and memorizing the keyboard is, I don't know, the rest is magic, or I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, that
But
was the thing I remember.
yeah,
Go ahead.
oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I remember helping my daughters at elementary school. And, they, again, kind of your point, they didn't think anything different about me. But when I went to go help them, I was the one on display for all the other kids. And they were nice, and everyone else was nice. Is that something
Mhm.
that happened to you as well? You go help the kids, or, you're the mom, and it's everyone else that's looking, and your kids are like, "Man, she's just mom."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. Plenty of times. And, you know, usually, and this has been throughout my life, as a kid, and you may have similar story, but growing up, my mom would do the death stare at somebody if they started just would stare at me because it was still very taboo when I was an amputee original, or 1980. It was just still very taboo. So as I'm growing up and my mom's staring at them, and I understand it, but I was like, it made me so uncomfortable. And I got to an understanding that people just want to connect. They want to understand, they want to know your story. I mean, maybe they don't say that I want to know your story, but they want to connect. And I think that that hit me, and I started saying, well, I've had amputations or else I would have died, and just kind of put it to that perspective that and then usually the kids are like, oh, okay. Some adults are, it's harder, of course, for adults to understand, I think, to some degree. But kids, I mean, all they want to do is connect somehow. So like I remember plenty of times where I was like, I just got transformer legs. And they're like, oh yeah, I've got some of those at home. Those are cool. And then we move on.
Yeah.
Um, but and usually I'll say it's still skin and bones. It just looks different. And I'll let them touch my hands and say, look, see, and they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, they tickle just as good. And I'll, and get them somehow, but just try to find creative ways to connect with them.
And it was interesting too, as you explained, back in the day, there wasn't places for our parents to look up things and like same with mine, suddenly they didn't even know I was going to have one hand, right? And I'm sure well, obviously they didn't know what was going to happen in your journey. What do you
Yeah.
think it was like for them? Did they ever talk about that and kind of
Oh
how
yeah.
it, yeah, and their learnings? Like, how did they get to the point to raise you so well adjusted?
I think um that's probably a very good question. I think that you know, we weren't my just parents weren't the hover type. And I mean it came out to my benefit because I learned to be so independent. Um that and I'm very stubborn. So I don't tell me I'm not going to do something, or give me time to figure it out. I'm going to learn, I'm going to figure out how I can do it. If I wanted, most of the time I wanted to do it bad enough that I will figure it out. Um, I think that my dad's mom was way more protective of me and wanted them to be like, you shouldn't do that because she could get hurt, or shouldn't try this or whatever. So I don't know if that was a rebellion from that, or if I don't know. But like I said, they never, I remember asking in sixth grade, I was kind of nervous, and I remember going to open house for sixth grade, and they had mentioned cheerleading, and I was like, Mom, could I try out? And she was like, well, sure, and it was such a great experience. I did 4 years of cheer, and I just loved it. And I some of the flips, I didn't want to lose my leg flying. Well, actually, I have lost my leg a couple times doing cartwheels across the gym floor. My leg would go flying, and have somebody come up and bring it back to me. But I just uh I don't think they really understood that. But however their mentality was at that time, they just, mom would say, I don't understand what you're going through. I'm not an amputee. I can't say that I get it, but we will cry about it, and then we'll laugh about it, and then we will move on.
Wow.
And that helped me a lot. My mom is very always had a very open mind, and like very kind of creative, I guess, and understanding of a lot of things. Even if she didn't get it, she still had that openness. And I think that that's where I get that particular skill from, is learning from her. So,
Yeah, it parallels a lot of my own stories with my parents. And when you think about it and how, like, there's people that are having that journey with their own children now, the way that you were brought up and the fact that you weren't given any breaks, I think is how you said it. Do you recommend that way to raise someone that's a little different like we are?
well, I do. You know, my daughter has her own challenges, and I'm kind of in the same boat in a way. Not, not as much physically, but so I've tried to play a balance in between there. I don't want to overly protect, but I also don't want to hinder her from whatever, because I always put it this way. I've met amputees who've lost one finger and think their entire world is over. And I mean, I'm sure it's detrimental. I'm not discounting that
Understood.
whatsoever,
Yeah.
because everybody has their own journey.
Yeah.
And then I meet people who have lost all limbs or most of all limbs, and they're like, what kind of work can I do now? And what can I get into? And I'm like, it's just when you work, or I mean, I run the amputee group and have for the last 12 years, and when you see those different mindsets, my motto in life is it's 10% physical and 90% mental. If you want to do it, you're going to do it. You know, I mean, you can find YouTube videos all day long of people who have no legs and they get around on their skateboards, they do things. Um, it just may look different than everybody else's way of doing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. In your household too, you have someone else that's in the limb loss
Mhm.
community. Your husband Billy. I know you wanted to bring that up, and
Yes.
he's gonna so honored that he's gonna be on the podcast as well. What is it like having the two of you in the same household?
It is very interesting someday. Um, yeah, Billy, the way so he's bilateral above elbow on both
Thank you.
sides due
Yes.
to a work accident. I'll save his exciting story as much as I can. But he does so much, and it's his mindset. He's got that mechanical type brain to where he figures things out like nobody's business. I mean, it blows my mind all the time that how he figures things out. And he might get frustrated, but he gets it. He really, other than helping him pull into his prosthetic arms in the morning, I mean, there's not much else so I mean, he may help have the kids help him do stuff, or like sometimes putting his jacket on is kind of hard for him to do, and he can do it. Trust
Yeah.
me. He's got lots of videos and of, even putting certain shirts on, and like he'll get stuck. He's trying to pull it over his head and he gets stuck and he just busts out of it like Superman or something, or Hulk. And so he can do it. But I think it's nice for him because he had lived for a good 10 years with just the arms by himself, because he wanted to figure things out for himself.
Yeah.
And so now I think he appreciates the help. Like I said, it's not that he couldn't do it because he had for so long in so many different ways, whether it's even calling up. He used to call a friend up to come over every morning and button his pants for him, because and then one day he figured it out. He's got a little string that he uses and he puts it around a doorknob, puts it through
Wow.
his buttonhole, and then kind of moves back and forth to get it to pull through the button to pull through the hole. I
Wow.
mean, and he did that because one day when he went to his friend's house that day to get his pants buttoned, he was sitting there and saw a string on the coffee table, and it just popped to his mind. I'm like, but that's what I'm talking about. The things, how he thinks like that is just, it's mind blowing to me. Um, but we have a lot of laughs. Some days are rough and some days are not, just like anybody else. But
Sure.
we get into our rhythm. And like when he helps cook in the kitchen, he's got his special tools, and on certain things that he does. His bathroom stuff is a little bit different, but for the most part, other than our room with all the legs and arms sitting around, that's always an interesting
Yeah.
perspective, is all of the prosthetics laying around in our room.
You know, it's interesting that
So,
in your lifetime, what have you seen as far as the difference in prosthetics, whether it be the physical makeup of them or even going through the insurance, if that's changed at all for you? What is that like? What's the prosthetic landscape look like for you as you've seen it in your lifetime?
I should have, I didn't think to grab it, but I have one of my very first prosthetics, and it's tiny and it's pretty much a wooden leg. I mean, the bottom was kind of a rubbery, like just disc type form of a foot. It was nothing special. Um, and I only had one originally. I was amputated it was a Symes ankle amputation on my left side. And then my right side, I lost my toes and my heel. So I had like this middle portion foot. I mean, at that time, the reasoning is save as much as you can, and then we'll deal with the rest later. So that was that actually made it harder for me growing up because I didn't have a prosthetic foot for my right foot. The way I had to do my shoes, I had could only wear high tops and I had to stuff my shoes with socks. And so every day it was a different orientation in there. And most days it was painful, because I
Mm-hmm.
always had an open wound or some kind of skin irritation. It was just, oh my goodness, I don't miss those days. I'll get to that in a minute, but it was very difficult. I think maybe about 20 when they first came out with an actual prosthetic for my right foot. And funny enough, it was like a boot, and I could slide my foot down into it and go along. Well, it had the prettiest toes, had the prettiest manicure. I mean, it was so, so pretty. And it's funny enough, the first day I put it on, we finally had been waiting forever to get it. It comes in, I try it on. I put my foot in, and the toes were facing this way, the opposite way.
Oh no.
So they had to send it back. I was like, no. But so and that was also the time that they had just come out with the gel liners. As a leg amputee, I had always wore the cotton or wool. I don't even know what material. I guess like a wool type,
Yeah.
maybe a mix. I'm not sure. Um, but they were miserable. I remember many, many times I'd be out doing some activity and get sweaty, and then I mean, it would just peel your whole layer of skin off, and it was just raw and it was very painful, plus calluses.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nightmare. So around the same time, like I said, about 20 years old, they came out with the gel liner, and that was amazing. It was such a game changer as far as comfort and breaking out and all of the things. So that was a big change. Um, Fast forward a little bit, I had started getting bone spurs when I around that same time, uh, early 20s. I got my first bone spur on, I believe it was my left leg, and they went in, they trimmed it down, had the surgery, healed a few months, and was on my way. Well, about I don't know, a year and a half later, I had one on my right side. They go in, they do the surgery, they remove it, I heal. And then this started happening more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I had my daughter at 28 years old. And I had been researching a procedure called the Ertl procedure. It's ERTL. It came out in during World War II. There was a surgeon, Ertl, yeah, Johannes Ertl, created it, and they align the tibia and the fibula, and then your body builds a natural bone bridge.
Oh wow.
There's no screws, there's no bolts, there's no plates, there's no nothing. And the only bad thing in 2 years' time, I had a friend introduce this to me, and then over 2 years, I researched and researched. I looked for any bad thing I could find on it. I wanted all the bad. That's my go-to. Find the bad, and then we'll go to the good. Um, but most of the time, it was coming across doctors who did their own version,
Mm.
and it usually didn't end well. Usually, there were plates and screws and stuff involved, and it just wasn't a good. So I ended up finding, oh, sorry, let me back up a sec. When my daughter, right before I even knew or conceived of her, I had a bone spur removed. I believe it's on my left side again. Had the surgery, did the thing, and I said, I'm done. And then I found out I was pregnant. By the time I had her, I had one on both sides. And I was like, I am done. I am absolutely done having surgery to remove bone spurs because they're just going to come back.
Hmm.
And like I said, it just became more and more frequent. So I did the election to elective revision. Um, I was just going to do my left leg first and then let it heal and see how things go and then do my right. And I was talking to my mom. It was like the week before my surgery, and um, she said, "Are you going to have both of them done?" And I was like, "Yeah, eventually I'll have the other one done." She was like, "Why don't you just go on and do them both and get it over with?" And I was like, I don't know, because I had a baby. I mean,
Yeah.
she was 9 months, and I was like, So I called the hospital or called the doctor's office, and I was like, they probably won't do it anyway. So I call them, and I get on the phone and talk to the nurse. And I was like, do you think that they would do both legs at the same time? And I'm hoping they won't, because this is a Monday and I'm having surgery Friday. And she come back, she was like, let me check. And she comes back and she was like, sure, we can do it. And I was like,
Oh.
oh crap. And I remember waking up from surgery. I was not even all the way coherent. And I remember feeling down my right leg because that was my most of any leg I had. It was the most one I had because I still at least had my ankle joint. And I remember reaching down and patting my leg and said, did I really tell them to do that? I mean, it scared the crap out of me, honestly. But actually I am so thankful because I had never been able to really run. Um, I couldn't walk long distances. And one of the biggest things after I had the revision is when I, in my original amputation, if I would be on like concrete and go down into the grass, step down and change terrain, I would always have to be real careful.
Okay.
And because, I mean, it would hurt. It would really, really hurt, or my foot would go to the side or something that would cause pain. So once I got good at walking in the new legs, I remember stepping down real hard off of a curb and I was like, oh, that's the greatest thing I've ever felt. I mean, it was just so amazing to experience that and not have to worry about pain. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that and the procedure and everything. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Was not aware of that. One thing I'm aware of is how
Yeah.
we met, and I want to talk about the great things you do in the support group that you have. You said you've been doing it for 12 years, I believe that is, right? Tell us
Thanks.
a little bit more
Yeah,
about your support group because it's a great group of people, obviously run by a great person. So I'd love to learn more.
thank you. I have a lot of help, so I don't want to take all the credit because it's definitely not just me. We started a group that, like I said, 12 years ago. It was June of 2012. And we had, oh my goodness, we had so many people. So it started out in our prosthetic office. There had been a lot of people who were talking about it, and me and a few others was like, well, let's just do an initial meeting, see what happens. And so we did, and it was amazing. We ended up, um, after the first initial meeting, it didn't really last. And there was about five of us that really stuck it out. There were times it was just us, but we always tried to be at the location at our date and time in case somebody needed our assistance. We were all very passionate about getting people back out in the community. We ended up, but Belinda, sorry, her last name is, um,
We can get that.
darn it, it's going to come to me in a minute. It's because I'm trying to think of it.
I
I
know that's
see it.
always the
It's
way it
just,
goes.
yeah. Belinda came and she really took hold, and she was our first president. And with her guidance, we actually started the nonprofit. And we one of the things we found is that most support groups start with their prosthetic company and then they end with their prosthetic company within a few years. So the
Interesting.
lifeline of an amputee group is very short-lived most of the time. We branched out because one of our biggest things and one of our biggest barriers originally was getting people to see us as an amputee group, not a blah, blah, blah prosthetic group. or this prosthetic group. We don't care which group you're with or who you see.
Mm-hmm.
But in all honesty, I get it because it's a very customized type of work that, I'm sure they're afraid of, somebody saying, well, I'd rather try this other company, because they heard somebody else speaking good about it. Well, we finally got everybody on board and was like, look, our goal, it's like finding a babysitter. We tell our amputees, it's do not, you can get suggestions from this person, that person, but we want you to do it like you would a babysitter for your kid. Find somebody that fits your personality, that works with your schedule, that's the level of niceness or whatever, good bedside manner or roughness, whatever it is you're looking for, and talk to them before you commit and try, because I know for me growing up with the prosthetics, you kind of feel like you're bound to that one group. Once you get in a group, you should not leave. And really it's changed and evolved in that from that perspective because um it's just like a primary care doctor though. And I think that's just been something through the years. You stay with your original primary care as long as you can. You stay with this doctor and you don't have to do that. That's where, speaking out for yourself, being your
Yeah.
own advocate. If things are not working for you, you do not have to stay in that relationship, if you will. Um, so we branched off. We've, like I said, got felt like we've taken down a lot of barriers. Not that piece is not still there, but it's come a long way. So we're very proud of that. We still meet. We meet twice a month. We meet in Southern Indiana and in Louisville. We do different outings. We do restaurant outings. We're still evolving this, but we've started where we're doing surveys. Whatever restaurant we go to, we'll do a survey. And our goal is to start giving those restaurants feedback
Oh,
from an ADA
that's a
perspective.
great idea.
You
Wow.
would be so amazed.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not. How many like basic things like the door, opening the door to the bathroom or to the main entrance,
Yeah.
you know, curbing, getting into, especially if you're in a wheelchair
Yeah.
or have a walker, um, seating arrangements. It's been really neat to see the feedback that we get from the surveys.
How receptive are the organizations when they get the feedback?
Now that's the part that we haven't quite um
That's okay.
got to that
Yeah.
piece. That's the surveys were like I said, when we lost Belinda in 2019, that kind of jump started us in a different way.
Hmm.
Trying to learn things, trying to organize. In the last 2 years, really getting an actual organized organization
Yeah.
um, is starting to really evolve, and it's exciting, but it's hard. It's very hard some days.
And what is the name of your group? I want to make sure everyone hears this.
Yeah, it's a moving forward limb loss network and social group.
And I think you can just
And I
Google it. You have the URL or you have other things to share.
Yes.
Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, so we started and we changed it from support group to network and social group. There's a lot of stigma around
Yeah.
support group, and so we are trying to change. It's still different. It's still, you know, changing all the time, in where we're wanting to go with the group. But just trying to help people know that, you know, it's not a just come in and fuss about why you're hurting today, or your leg has just been nothing but problem, your prosthetic's not fitting, you're mad. It's not that. It's we are a family. Like I call it my amp fam. We are there for each other. I mean, even on personal level, day-to-day life. We try to give each other our own hacks, different things that works for me. Or I had a lot of back pain, lower back pain this year, and I've found some really good stretches that helped me. So I would take them to the group and share them, see if it helps somebody else. Um, So there's a lot of good, just, trying to help people know they can get back out in the community. And if you're not comfortable doing it necessarily by yourself, you got us and we can do different things to get you out. And we raise money for the Patty Rossback youth camp at our chili cook-off every year in
Nice.
March. So we have a big fun thing, and we usually have it at a firehouse, and we have the firemen come and do the taste testing, and then we judge them and give out prizes and raise money and things like that. So we also have a monthly newsletter that we've been doing since really early in the group. Um, we're over 100 different editions of it. We put them on our Facebook. We also have a web page, and let me make sure I'm saying it exactly so that I don't mess anybody up. It's ampmovingforward.com. We are on Facebook. It is a private group for probably don't even need to say,
Yes.
but we do keep it private. But we do have like the prompter questions. I think there's like three of them. If you answer them, you know, we'll let you in. I will let you in usually. I'm the one. Uh, but yeah, it's really been an amazing experience. That's one of the things as far as the kids, they grew up, my kids grew up with the group. I mean, they
Right.
were very young when we started the group. So that's also helped them, I think, along the way, just throwing that in there.
And didn't you say too that if people want to join remotely, they can do that? Am I correct on that? I don't know.
Yes. Yes. So we are trying to get where we're including a Zoom. We haven't got there yet, but just one of the things we're wanting to do to expand because as far as our Facebook page, we have over 300 people worldwide. Yeah,
Wow.
so I mean, yeah, it's so cool. Like I said, click of a button, and um, one of the things I had never met really any other amputees until after I had the revision. I had the amputee friend kind of connect me ahead of time, but that was one of the groups that ended pretty quick. It started and stopped. But I hadn't really ever met any other amputees until then. And then I found out in 2012 or 2013 about the Amputee Coalition. And I went in 2013 to my first conference, and it was just mind blowing. But some of the people I met there joined us on our Facebook page. It's been such a cool experience. So,
I
yeah,
agree. Growing up, I knew no one else, and it's been so great to meet people like you and figuring out
it
and
is.
hearing all the great things you're doing. And as we go to there, as we close this out, what are you looking forward to in the future, and what are you working towards? What does it look like for you?
So, goodness. In 5 years, my youngest is going to be graduating, and so I mean that to me is going to flip the script on life
Yeah,
anyway. I've got
yeah.
all my gardening tools that I'm going to be ready to do a lot more gardening when they graduate. But personally, I hope a lot for myself and Billy. He does motivational safety speaking, and we've actually talked multiple times about doing something together because there's not a lot of amputee couples,
No,
much less one missing arms and one missing
no.
legs.
I know of one. That's
So
you.
so we're kind of we would love to do something with that. What it looks like, I'm not sure. But that is something I'm building into my 5 year plan. As far as the group is concerned, oh my goodness, I mean, just the possibilities are endless. One of my biggest things is I would love to grow the amputees that are thriving. And I, like I said, I know growing up and early in my journey as an amputee, because I was actually a year old when I came out of the coma and they actually did um the amputations. But um I would love to see more connection because, as far as our amputee group is concerned, people a lot of people like and use the monthly meetings, but as far as getting out and evolving in maybe some more active ways, that getting people who are not afraid to come out of the I just want to feel normal, I don't want to hang out with other amputees. I would love to develop that and try to really get into that space and grow our youth, whether it's youth, not necessarily youth in age, but youth as new amputees, if you
Yeah.
will.
That's
So,
great.
yeah,
I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on the We're Not Stumped podcast, Kelly. I appreciate your time. I think there's more to the story. I know there's going to be more to the story as you go forward. I'm going to have Billy on. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow, and it's going to be great to have back-to-back weeks of this great family and this great story being on the We're Not Stumped podcast. Thank you so much for taking your
thank
time. I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. You're amazing too. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the We're Not Stumped podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the We're Not Stumped podcast, please go to we'renotstumped.com and fill out the form. But if nothing else, please like, share, and subscribe. But if you're going to do one of those three, please share it. There's so many people out there that need to hear these stories, the great stories of the incredible people that are on this podcast. So do me a favor, please like, share, or subscribe. Thank you.